Hello and welcome to this edition of the Runnin with the Herd podcast, powered up by Herd Nation, a part of the Rivals Network, sponsored by Mike Gwynn Insurance Agency. Long time no see, Herd fans. I'm your host, Aaron Coleman, the producer of the Runnin with the Herd podcast. As always, joined by my co-host, Josh Stowers of Herd Nation. Josh, welcome, man.
What's going, dude?
Hey, it's going. Long time no see, man. How you been?
Not too bad. It's like we were just talking there a second ago. It's been a quick summer, but spring camp to fall camp, that time period just seemed like it blew by. So it's not only that, but fall camp is over already itself. So that was a fast 2 weeks, and obviously we're 10 days away from the season opener.
Oh yeah, it's right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. We are streaming live on YouTube right now, so be sure to check that out. If you're on YouTube, please, hit that subscribe button and give us a follow on Facebook, all other social media as well. The archive is going to be up on X and Facebook momentarily, but let's get into it here, Josh. We had a fall camp. We had 16 days for the guys to work, 16 days for the guys to do their thing. And from day 1 to day 16, what have you seen from this football team as they get ready for their first game on August the 30th?
Man, like I said, it was a fast 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, I guess. But the thing I think that you notice the most, and I was only able to attend Saturday practices, so I was there 3 days. But the thing that I think I noticed most was just the hunger, like the sense of just that from the coaching staff, and not just from the coaching staff, but it kind of fed down to the players. Actually, it was the first day I was there, that first Saturday. It didn't take long to see Coach Gibson kind of put his stamp on. He's always preaching about toughness, and that guy certainly emphasizes that throughout practice. And then not just him, but his assistant coaches, the same. Just hearing those guys talk about it. And reiterating it. And that word was spoke so many times throughout fall camp. Like I said, it's just one of those things that they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you could certainly see things that they did throughout camp to help push that. Just subtle things, ways that they change practice to kind of push that a little bit further. But that was probably the biggest thing that I saw, was just the amount of just the hunger, the toughness that was there. The overall feel was just a little bit different, from the previous regime. And maybe that's just a mindset overall. I'm not real sure, but just being at field level and hearing those guys talk and hearing the players, how they kind of spoke about the coaches, just a different feel, in a very good way, obviously.
Right. And we are now streaming live on X as well. Get that premium account. So make sure that you're checking us out on not only X, but also on YouTube as well. Archive will be up on Facebook. One of the things that I noticed in reading about this year's edition of the Herd is that fight, is that hunger that Coach Gibson talked about. And, obviously, toughness is a big hallmark of not only Tony Gibson as a coach and as a man, but also what he wants this football team to look like. When in terms of flying around, getting to the ball, making sure that you assert yourself on offense, both lines of scrimmage, offensively and defensively. One of the things that kind of stood out to me in one of his last press conferences is the fact that he talked a little bit about the offensive line. And there's only 2 returning starters from last year's team on the offensive line, and center Eric Meeks and tackle Jalen Slappy, who is also nominated. Both men actually were nominated as captains for this year's team, which speaks a lot not only to their ability on the football field, but their ability to lead, whether it be vocally, whether it be by example, what have you. But one of the things that stood out to me was like how that group kind of came together. Can you touch a little bit on that for me?
Yeah, so although that only two had saw time in terms of starts last season, we actually have four of those guys back. As far as the guys that I think will be be starting up front. Um, so in all four of those five, three of the five I should say, saw significant time last year. Tariq Montgomery would be the fourth. He saw sparing. He played sparingly last year, primarily on special teams. But he's a guy that, I know the coaches, even although he's a young guy, the coaches have a lot of, they see a lot of potential in him. And I mean, to look at the guy, I mean, he looks like an NFL tackle. I mean, he's just a monster of a man and wears it well. Athletic looking, but nonetheless, I think the thing that stands out the most about that group is maybe just the leadership.
Okay.
Obviously, like you said, Jalen Slappy and Eric Meeks, both captains. You have Shinmarcus Adams. He's I believe, a third-year player in the system.
Mm-hmm.
He saw some snaps last year. The McDuffie kid at tackle, I forget his first name off the top of my head, but I mean, that guy is
huge.
For people who remember, Buck Baldridge, who played several years ago, back maybe even the Snyder era. I mean, he was 6'9", and I would say McDuffie rivals him in terms of height, and most certainly in girth, because he is a big boy. But across the front, that's a big group. I mean, it's really one of the bigger groups we've had. But what my point is I think the thing that you'll see out of that group is the leadership aspect. A lot of those guys are older guys. They've played quite a few snaps, whether it be here or somewhere else. So I think that's what's allowed them to gel so quickly up front. It's basically been the same five all spring or all fall camp long in terms of working with the ones. So that's always a plus. When you go into the season kind of knowing who those five guys are, because that's where it starts. I mean, it starts up front. If you can't keep the quarterback upright, that's going to factor in. And if you can't get some push up front in the run game, then you're not going to move the ball very well. So those five guys, like I said, I think it's just the experience that's going to play the best for them, and the leadership roles that Jalen and Eric will provide throughout the season.
Yeah, collective experiences is something that in the transfer portal era you definitely have to keep in mind when you're looking at different units, different position groups, and there is probably no more important position group in football than that group. So, if the offensive line's not doing their thing, it's very, very difficult to do anything else, as we all know. Taking a look at some of the other guys on offense and defense who may have an impact this season. I got a couple of guys in mind on the offensive side of the ball, and this was a holdover from the last coaching staff, and I think he's poised to have a pretty solid year as perhaps a number 2 back, maybe as the lead back. We'll see how it goes. Roommate's dog's going crazy. Anyway, Antoine Roberts, he's had a big fall camp. Coach Gibson's talked about him quite a bit. He said some positive things about him in the spring. He's coming off of the ACL injury, but I think that Antoine's going to have a pretty solid year for the Herd, toting the rock, and you'll be seeing a lot of number 44 this upcoming fall. Now, on the flip side, on the defense, a guy that most Herd fans will know from his days playing at Cabell Midland is Cannon Lewis. And I think that he's potentially one of those guys that can make an impact on the defensive side, flying around, hitting guys in the mouth, that kind of thing. Speak about those two players first, and then give me who you think are going to make an impact for the Herd, both offensively and defensively this fall.
With Antoine, I remember when he signed here, I was telling some guys this today. I spoke, he started out at Wisconsin, and, there was an issue off the field. It really wasn't his fault, to be completely honest. But that guy, the Wisconsin Rivals guy, told me then that he felt like in a year or two that Roberts had a chance to be Wisconsin's starting running back, just based off his potential. So obviously the talent is there. When he got here, he was behind Rasheen Ali, obviously, who was sounds like he made the 53-man roster with the Baltimore Ravens. Shout out to him.
Shout out to Rasheen.
And then after that, he did experience the injury last season that kind of slowed him down. So, he's just had some obstacles to face, during his time here. But he's healthy now. He's moving well. It was a name obviously a lot of people probably forgot just because, like I said, he was kind of behind, deep on the depth chart originally, and got banged up a little bit last year. But he looks good. Coach Gibson's been pretty vocal in the sense of how impressed he's been with him. Just the work he's done. The leadership he's provided. In that room, which I think that room overall is one of the stronger units on the team, to be honest.
Yep.
It's not just Antoine. There's a couple other guys, and we'll talk about them here in a little bit. But I think it'll be interesting to see what he can do with his opportunity. Like I said, I don't think it's a question of talent. It's just going to be a question of production, because if he doesn't produce, then there's 3 or 4 guys in that room that are behind him that are pushing him. So that's the greatest thing about competition is, you're going to push one another. And I think you've been able to see that so far in camp. As far as Cannon goes, like you said, he's a local guy. So that, that alone, raises a lot of, excitement. He comes from NC State, so he understands, Coach Gibson's system. I mean, he's played in the 3-3-5 a little bit, so he knows that. I do think that's helped not just him, but I think it's helped with that room. You had some newer guys that hadn't played in that system necessarily. Obviously, his leadership there and his familiarity with the system, helps not just him, but helps those other guys with like maybe things that he sees in the system that they may not see yet. Anytime you can get a guy like that, like I said, a local guy who's a smart guy, understands the system, and can kind of be a coach on the field. That's a huge plus. And I think you'll see that throughout the season. From Canada at that position. As far as guys for me that I think fans need to get used to hearing the name, DeMarcus Floyd Lacey at receiver. I've talked about him a couple times so far in camp.
Mismatch guy.
I think that guy is a problem. He's very versatile. Can do a lot of things. Get the ball in his hand, and he can do some things. I wouldn't say he's a burner, but I wouldn't say slow either. He's probably quicker than he is fast, but he plays fast, and that's the important thing. But like I said, they're going to be able to find him in a variety of ways. So, and if they can move him around and do some things, that's a guy that the defense is going to have to focus on, which will take some, it will allow other players to make plays at that point. I'll add, Joe Sean Barbie at running back. That's another guy. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He can run the ball. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's not the biggest guy, but he runs really tough. There's, if you follow social media, there's been a couple highlights of him taking it to the house, from the Herd Football account. So, obviously, that was a small glimpse to how explosive he can be. And it's not just, Robertson. It's not just Joe Sean. There are a couple other guys in that room. Michael Allen is another guy that's done some things this camp that I think, fans will get used to hearing that name as well. But on the defensive side of the ball, I would say Braden Ward is a guy that I just think has a ton of potential. Big body, big frame, athletic. he's a local guy, played at Riverside High School here above Charleston. He's athleticism has never been an issue for him. He shattered a backboard in high school. That's never been a problem for him. He came here as a walk-on, and now he's a scholarship guy, and I honestly believe that he's going to be a guy that is a problem for offenses.
Potential,
yeah. And he can do some different things. He's playing on the defensive line, but he's somebody that he had an interception last year when he dropped in coverage. So, like I said, athleticism is plus for him. So, he kind of gives us some flexibility there at the end spot. Marvin Myers in the secondary, another captain, is a guy that from the first practice and on, somebody that I have just loved to watch. He plays that position with a confidence that you see a lot of the really good cornerbacks play with. He's not a trash talker really or anything like that. It's just the way that he carries himself.
Okay.
Like I said, you can just see the confidence, I guess is the best way to say it. And that's important at that position for, a number of reasons, but and obviously leadership is not a problem for him either. Otherwise he would not have been voted a captain. So it's important when you have guys like that, that are successful, not just, in what they're doing, but successful, I think when you're voted a captain, I think it's not only a representation of what you're doing on the field, but probably more so what you're doing off the field.
Yep.
So, when your captains and your best players are also your best leaders, that's a huge plus and a tribute to the team and the guys that Coach Gibson and his staff are recruiting. Those are probably the four guys that I would name in terms of players that fans might not be familiar with, but I think they will be after the first several games for sure.
Gotcha. You are listening to the Runnin with the Herd podcast, powered up by Herd Nation, part of the Rivals Network, sponsored by Mike Gwynn Insurance Agency, streaming live on both YouTube and X. The archive will be up on Facebook later. It'll also be up on the Herd Nation website by Thursday. You can catch it on Old Fairfield as well as Herd Nation. Be sure to check that out. All the great content that you will see on that site. And as we move forward here, before we get into expectations for this season, what specifically are you looking for week to week from the team? The all-important quarterback position. Now, when you talk about last year's situation, we did not know who the starter was going into week one against Stony Brook. It was basically between two guys. Both are no longer with the team. One of whom ended up being the Sun Belt newcomer of the year in Braylon Braxton. Obviously had a lot of success while he was in Huntington wearing the Kelly green and white. He moves on. Stone Earl moves on. Now it's a three-man race. At first, it was thought to be a two-man race, but a young freshman from Hurricane has kind of inserted himself into the conversation and may be the lead story moving on. So, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, Ja'Kai Long, Zion Turner. Thoughts, opinions, observations, what have you liked?
I'll start with Ja'Kai, just because I'm from Hurricane, so he's a local guy for me. I watched him play in high school. Just to be perfectly honest, athleticism and ability, physical ability was never an issue for Ja'Kai.
Never.
I mean, that's never. I mean, even last year, I heard coaches talk about how well he could spin it. And, he is a gifted thrower, to say the least. I mean, the ball comes out quick. He's got good arm strength. He's a better athlete than what most people give him credit for. And I will say that, watching him in high school, to seeing him now, that's even improved, whether it be because he's just gotten bigger and stronger or because he's more confident because he's bigger and stronger.
Could be a combination of both for him.
Yeah. But he's moving much, much better. I will give him a lot of credit. You know, he said there 2 weeks ago, he talked about how he took his preparation this offseason much more serious than he ever has before. And it showed. Like I said, he's had a really good camp. He surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. You know, he's a redshirt freshman. Sometimes you don't really expect, you know, that from a young quarterback. But I mean, he's had a really good camp, and he deserves to be in the race. You know, Carlos is an experienced guy, transferred him from Syracuse. You know, he's done some things this camp that at times you were like, oh wow, that's, I mean, like insanely
Why
impressive.
is a 4-star?
Yeah, and you know, just things that he's done that yeah, he almost makes look easy, but you know, the reality is it's not. And Coach Gibson talked about him the other day. He said that, you know, he thinks he'll be even better in live action because, you know, a lot of his game is the run game. You know, when you know things are live and he gets out on the edge and can make plays with his feet just the same. You know, obviously we're not going full contact in camp because we're not trying to, you know, injure our quarterbacks, but and that's not something limited to Marshall. That's, you know, no one wants to see their quarterback go down hurt in fall camp because they're going, you know, full tilt. So, you know, obviously, you know, he's in the race too, like you said. And then Zion is a guy that's, you know, he played at Jack State last year. You know, so he's familiar with the system. You know, he is probably the best runner of the three. You know, you can tell that he's played in the system. You know, just some of the reads and stuff that he's, you know, he sees it a little bit differently, especially in that, you know, in the run option game. You see things a little bit different. You can tell, but you know, so yeah, that obviously gives him an advantage. You know, playing in the system. You know, a year longer than the other two guys. But yeah, all three guys. You know, like you said, I mean, you know, Coach Gibson said on Saturday, you know, we may not know who the starter is until 3:30 in Athens, Georgia. You know, on the 30th. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I have my own opinion. You know, he didn't want to go too awful deep into it, so I won't either. You know, but it'll be interesting to see. You know, like you said, last year, you know, we played the first 4 games with one guy, and then we switched and played with another guy. So just because somebody starts on August 30th doesn't mean that's going to be the guy that we play with the rest of the season either. I mean, that's not me, you know, hitting at anything or alluding to anything. That's just me being. That's just me, you know, basing that off of, you know, a year ago. So, and I would tell you that I would argue till I'm blue in the face that last year's fall camp, Stone Earl was the best quarterback on the roster. You know, but it was, I mean, I sat beside a guy who knows quarterbacking as well as anybody last season for one practice, and just for that one practice, he agreed with what I said. So
there you go.
Yeah, you know, it's you just don't know. I mean, until, you know, the lights come on and see how kids react and things like that, and it's just a lot of things, you know, are it's different. You know, you can practice all day long every day, and you know, when the lights come on, you know, it's a different feel, it's a different game. And I will say this: no matter who it is, yeah, they have their work cut out for them on the road in the first game of the season
between the hedges,
against the top 5 Bulldogs. So,
what a way to start!
Yeah, I mean, but the thing about that game is you know, whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, yeah, that game, you know, honestly is not going to tell us a whole lot, you know, because, you know, we went to Notre Dame a couple years ago, and then the following week we lost to Bowling Green. So yeah, it's week to week it can be different, and but yeah. Anyways, I kind of got off base there, but you know, back to the quarterback position. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's like I said, you got the young gun with Jakad, and you've got, you know, kind of, you know, more experienced guys with Carlos and Zion. So it's who knows at this point.
Who knows? And as we put a bow on it here for the fall camp preview edition of the Running with the Herd podcast, expectations for this season and what you want to see week to week. I just want to see continuous improvement from all three phases of the team: offense, defense, and special teams. It sounds like the young man from Ireland, in terms of special teams, is doing a good job kicking the ball. I have a feeling anytime that we are inside the 40 and it's fourth down, I have a good feeling, just from everything I've heard, from everything that I've seen, that he could put 3 points up on the board when we need them. As far as the punting game with Totten, who is a holdover from last year's Sun Belt Championship team, hopefully he can pin him inside the 20. I know that that's been a mark of a good Marshall team in years past, is when the punter, whoever that may be, whether it be Vedvik or Tyler Williams or anybody else, pinned the opponent inside the 10 or inside the 20. It's very hard to start a drive inside the 5 as opposed to the 35. So, the 95 yards to go is a little bit different animal than, 65, 75 yards or what have you. So you want to see that improve. Defensively, I hope that they get after it. I hope that they force some turnovers and, get after the quarterback. You mentioned Braden Ward a little bit earlier in the show. I'm looking for some big things from him. And offensively, just stick to the script, run Rod Smith's offense, don't turn the ball over, play within yourself, and just, play Marshall football, play the tough brand of football that Coach Tony Gibson preaches. And if you do that, I'm not going to put like a win-loss record on it right now, but I do think that they're going to win more than they lose if they do those things.
Yeah. I think, it's really a tale of two seasons. I mean, you have your non-conference and then you have your conference schedule. I think by the time that conference play rolls around, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of where we're at. Anybody that goes out and tries to predict preseason wins and losses, it's honestly just a waste of time, especially in the day and age of the portal, because I mean, you don't know what you have and what you don't have. Like I said, until the lights come on and you play some games, like I said, anybody that, I saw today where it said that, Marshall had, they did say Marshall had the toughest schedule in the Sun Belt overall. But I think they gave them like a 7% chance to win the conference championship. Like, what are you basing that off of? We have, almost 60 new kids, and other schools have 20 and 30 new kids. What could you possibly be basing that off of to know anything? It's just, that's just clickbait, honestly, at this point. So, that's, these people have not went to a practice. They have not witnessed anything. And yet, ESPN and others are sometimes the most vocal about what they think is going to happen. And they truly have no idea.
None.
And that's not to say that people who have been to practice or are familiar with things will do either, because you don't know what someone else has. I mean, we don't know what Coastal Carolina has at this point. We don't know what Louisiana has at this point. I did see where Louisiana named the Webkin starting quarterback, but what does that mean? I mean, it doesn't mean anything on August 20th.
No, it doesn't.
Wins and losses is near impossible. Like you said, it's really about getting better and improving week to week. And hopefully we can, I will say this, and again, this is me on August 20th saying this, is after week 1, I don't think there's a game on the schedule that we can't win. And that's not me saying that we can't win in week 1. I'm just saying that's a much taller task than the next 11 games. So I don't think there's some juggernaut in the Sun Belt this year that's just going to run the table and that we can't beat. So I think if, like you said, get out there and I was talking to one of the coaches there a couple of weeks ago at the fan day, and he and I were talking about just the toughness aspect of things. There's a lot of times when the tougher team wins 1 or 2 or 3 more games simply because of that word. I mean, if you are not mentally tough and physically tough, for 4 quarters, you're going to lose more than you're going to win. And like I said, that is something that they have constantly preached. I mean, like I said, I have heard that word a number of times out of Coach Gibson, out of his assistants, and out of the players even in interviews and stuff. Just talking about that and
All
talking,
about talking.
Liz. Yeah, it's I mean that is his game, and he's a blue collar guy from West Virginia, from Bain, West Virginia. I mean, like, and fans and the community, could rally around that mentality. I mean, it's West Virginia is a blue collar state; it always will be. I think that's part of the reason that they've been so successful selling season tickets this year. They said that they've sold more season tickets this year than they have individually over the last decade. I think that's part of the reason they've been so successful with the end zone deck. I think nearly 90% of those have been sold. So that is a great deal. It's I can't wait to see the finished product there. You can kind of see it coming together now, and just kind of visualize what it's going to look like. And I have not been on the inside to know what it looks like, but people who have seen the renderings have told me that it looks incredible. So, I have 4 season tickets myself, so I can't necessarily go out and spend 10 grand on season tickets for 4 seats. But so I'm a little bit jealous of people who get set up there and check it out. But no, that's a great addition. Shout out to the administration for making that happen. Shout out to Devin Miller. He keeps pushing it on social media. He kind of gave us a little bit of
Devin Miller.
He kind of gave us a little bit of a point around. I won't say a walk around because we didn't really walk around because of all the construction, but he kind of went into detail on things and what was included and all that. So, but back to the wins and loss things. It's too early to know. Like I said, if we went 11-1, it wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, because I just don't think there's a game on the schedule that we can't win after week 1. And it'll be interesting. I'm excited to get it going. Like I said, I love the approach the coaches are taking with the kids. They preach family. The kids echo that. Again, that is something that people can always relate to. They are really trying to rally, a lot of the former players together with what, some of the things they're doing off the field. So I love that too. Mm-hmm. It's just a different feel. I love it.
Yeah, definitely a different feel. Brand new season starts August 30th between the hedges, Marshall and Georgia. Look out for a podcast about that coming up on game week of Georgia. We'll come into you. We will be coming to you live via live stream the week of the home opener against Missouri State. So be on the lookout for that as well. For Josh Stowers, I'm Aaron Coleman saying so long. Thanks for listening. You can catch the archive of this broadcast on Facebook, and you could also catch the archive on Herd Nation as well as Old Fairfield, streaming live on both X and YouTube. For Josh Stowers, I'm Aaron Coleman saying thanks for listening, and as always, go Herd.